What's up, y'all? So it has been a hot minute since I have made a video. Reason being is just without fuel pump, you can't really do a whole lot. I did have some work to do to the car, but never really had a free night just to sit down and do it all and film. So I kind of just putzed with it a couple times a week for an hour, and that was about it. But what I ended up doing was installing the fire suppression system. And so it's a very kind of a brutal install because it's super morbid. You're thinking about the worst possible case, which is ironic, as you'll see later in this video. But yeah, so you're just thinking about the worst possible scenario you could ever have in your super expensive race car and all that good stuff. But I'll kind of show you how it turned out, which I like it quite a bit, actually. I wish I would have used all flexible stainless braided line because it's just easier to work with. But this stuff ended up being pretty nice and it turned out pretty good. So you can see back here, we have the fire bottle. And then you're supposed to run one line into the trunk for your fuel system. So that is that line there. It is not nearly as tight as it looks, so I'll show you. She's got some room, so it is not stiff as a board. And then the other line is supposed to go to you. So it's pretty hard to see, but basically all it does is it comes and it goes up under here, through the shifter, past here, and then it comes out right down there, right at my feet, basically, my feet and knees. And so then you have a couple lines that you can run externally, and I'll flip the camera around and show you what I did there. Here's our bottle. I still got to put the pin in and everything for the cable. But so this line here is actually your line to get out of the tank and go to the rest of the car. So I just made it go right up here. It runs right along the edge of the cage up into the roof. And then I still got to tie it up, but it comes and it's going to be tied right here, and then it comes all the way over to here. So the only thing I don't like is that it's behind this, but the way the nozzles are, it sprays outward anyway. So it should be spraying right at the motor, and if you're still rolling and you pull that thing, your air is going to push it back into your fire, say if it's at the back of your fuel rails over here or something like that. Basically the same case in the other one, using the same hole, same spot. All that one did is it ran through the dash and then right up in there. So it went all the way behind that dash and cut around into a hole out in there. And then I did one more. I teed off of that main line there and I put it, and it actually aims in this vent. You can't really see it. You can kind of see it in there. It's that gold looking thing. I might move it and just bend it down at my feet more because I'm not really sure if I'm a fan of it. But then for cable location, I put it right there. So that should work good. It's easy to grab right on the shifter. It looks nice. And that one will deploy the one that's in the vent here, and then the two in the engine bay. And the other two are glass ones. So when they get so hot, they'll just break and it'll automatically deploy the entire bottle. So that's what we got going on with that. Pretty happy with how it turned out, actually. I really like it. I painted this line black so you couldn't really see it. Like I said, this line is kind of a pain because you can't really get it so it's, perfectly straight without actually having like a nice bender. And it all came in like a coil, so you got to unbend it as you do it. So then, as you know, I had an issue with the dump valve not working. So I took that off and went and checked it all out, and everything was fine. I could jump it and it would go, and it was all good. So I put it back in, and I realized that when I wired it, I had it wired incorrectly. So I was applying it with two 12-volt signals. So I switched it to a ground, and then I still had it set up on dump valve and it wouldn't work. But I think with the pulse width, I had it on 1 hertz, and I don't think that's enough to make that thing actually do anything. So I never tried it there. I just switched it to a spool assist because that's all I use it for. So it doesn't really need the pulse width or the solid state relay. But on spool assist, the solenoid clicks, everything seems to be fine. I haven't tried it out yet, but I will be trying that before we go testing. And so then that brings you to the next part of the story, the fuel pump. So going back and forth with aeromotive, they recommend a larger filter. They said that one's probably really clogged. I pulled it apart and it was, perfect. It looked brand new, which it should. Doesn't have a whole lot of, it's got a lot of miles on it, but nothing crazy. I always put in pretty good fuel. Everything's always been nice. I wouldn't say pretty good fuel. It's always been out of the pump, but I've never had fuel that's sat forever or anything like that. Everything's always been pretty clean. So, and it has run on pump gas before, so we have that going for it too. That's always good for your filters. So going back and forth with them, and they said they were going to pull it apart, and I shipped it off, and I hadn't heard anything from a while, so I emailed them, and this was a couple weeks ago, and they said that they were going to get into it that week. And I never heard back, and then I emailed the guy again on Monday, and I never heard back from him, and I was like, you know, he's on vacation, it was a holiday weekend, yada yada. So I just elected to buy another one. I was like, whatever, I'll have a spare when this one comes back, you know, we can't miss, I mean, we can, but I just don't want to miss so much time, because you really only get to use a car like this for a few months of the year, and I want to go test and want to drive around and enjoy it. So shout out to my buddy Troy. He had an aeromotive 5.0 and he sold it to me. So that's where we'll pick up this video. I went and installed that guy, had a little bit of runtime on it, which was perfect because they do come bad out of the box. So it was really a perfect scenario for that. So I installed it, and that's where you'll pick up this video. Well guys, here she goes. I ended up buying an aeromotive 5.0, which you probably heard in the beginning, but we're gonna fire it up. I just got it installed, I just got it wired in, put some fuel back in it. I'm gonna power it up, check for some leaks, and hopefully we should be good. So let's do it now. Oh, no pump? Bizarre. Let's check the tune-up. All right, so with all my wiring messing around and shit, I ended up loosening up a ground, but we got fuel pump now, so let's see if she fires up. Hit it. Almost. Something smoking? Oh yeah. Well, as you've seen, we made a pretty hell of a solid pull. Everything on the data looks good, but the car shut off when I let off. And I was like, that's bizarre. Why is it doing that? And so we just kind of like coasted for a while. And like I could hear the motor was still running, probably just because the transmission was spinning. And so then like the Holly rebooted and come back up, and I pull over and it was like running, but it was like weird. And so I was like, whatever. So I just shut it off. And I don't know if the throttle cable's going to hell, but it seems like it changes TPS sometimes when you do a pull like that. It'll like lose its spot, which is really strange, and the sensor's tight. I just felt it. But so then we pull over, and like I redo the TPS, go to light it back up, acts like it's dead, and we see a puff of smoke come out. And I'm like, what in the world? And so then Dylan runs over here and looks, nothing's going on. So I light the starter up again, and then it really starts smoking, and he starts screaming fire. And as you know, I just put a fire system in this. I don't have the bottle hooked up, but I always carry this little white one just for like an emergency like this. I got this little guy here. So he starts screaming fire, and I hop out with the extinguisher and kill that shit. So not a great kickoff to the first drive after being down for 3 weeks, but I don't even know what to say. That is the absolute last words you want somebody to say to you when you're sitting in your car that you have way too much time and money into. So luckily everything's okay. I got to get it home so I can rinse all this fire stuff off of here, because that'll ruin the paint and everything, and I got to hose the car off basically. But the car is fine. I'm going to pull the dipstick and just cruise it on home. I think we'll be all right. But scary shit, guys. That is no bueno. When the dipstick pulled out, it hit the starter is what the situation was. And if you remember from my videos, I added a little stud to it. It had like maybe 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch clearance, but I suppose with that thing loose, it'll just hit it. And that's exactly what happened. So probably end up replacing the starter out of this. Probably had to get a new dipstick, because I tell you what, that thing was glowing red. I mean, glowing red. I'd never seen nothing like that. So weird scenario, but everything's good and we're all right. So we'll get her on home and address the problems, I guess. Well, as you've seen there, that was not an ideal situation at all. And I'll kind of show you. I didn't really have a whole lot of damage. Thank the Lord. I mean, just put a brand new diaper on it. It's like $280 from Motion. And this thing came out pretty unscathed. I mean, everything looks super mint, and I don't think anything got burned at all. So that's awesome. Another awesome thing is Dylan and I were not hurt. It didn't get out of control. It's the reason why we use the extinguisher. I know that, you know, you can say kill the switch, but I had a problem with that. I did not wire it. I don't know if it just got hooked up backwards when the previous shop did all the wiring on it, but they had 2 wires flipped around that should have been, and then the switch would actually kill the whole car. And I just never got around to changing it because I thought it was one main power wire, but I dug into it a little bit here earlier and fixed it. But here is the extent of the damages. This is the alternator wire, and that is what hit the dipstick, which this is all that was left of it after it melted it off. And this is in fact stuck in and welded onto this. And yeah, this dipstick has always been broken. That's why it's so short, but I can always get it in there good because it had enough press to pop in. This is the same dipstick that I ran on that last motor, which had tons of passes on it. Thing never came loose, never did anything. And I got it in this one pretty good, and apparently it did not want to stay in there. I don't know if it broke or if it just popped out. I've never had the tube actually pop out. I've popped the end out of it before, like, geez, you can't even get the end out of this one, but I suppose because it's welded down here. But I've had that come out before, and but I've never had the whole stick, which is weird because when you shove it in there and it's in there and then you bolt it down, it shouldn't really be able to move. So I don't know why it came out. That was really weird. It did have plenty of clearance from this little stud that I had on here, which you can see there. I mean, it sticks out maybe 3/4, 5/8 of an inch out of the other stud. But when the dipstick manages to work its way out of that hole and hit that, that does no good. So that was the cause for the fire. I'm just going to replace, you can actually buy this solenoid from Jegs, so I'm just going to replace that so it has the regular stud on it. And it should be fine. I don't like that regular stud because it's so hard to get them big wires to attach in there nicely, but that's just what we have to do, because if it's going to be that close to the dipstick, you cannot have that at all. So everything still worked. I mean, I pulled the dipstick out and drove it home with no problems. It ran good, it started up good, my alternator was charging, and everything was fine. So no damages there, but just a piece of advice for anyone, you might as well carry a little fire extinguisher with you, because you never know. I mean, I've never had a dipstick pop out, and I've had them broken before, just like this one, or just a shitty fit, or whatever the case may be. I've never lost one before, and this one managed to pop out of there. So super stupid, super glad I carry that extinguisher, because that ended the problem real quickly. And I'll show you kind of the engine bay. The stuff really did nothing. I mean, it was probably only on there for 40 minutes max. I mean, I was only 5 minutes from the house. I didn't drive fast because I didn't know how much oil, or like if that tube was even in there or not, because it was all covered by the diaper. So I just drove like 20, 30 miles an hour all the way home. And yeah, everything was fine. All the sensors worked, the starter worked. It ran good, everything was good. So we got out of there unbelievably lucky. Made a hell of a mess, but we got it all cleaned up and everything seems to be okay. What I was saying earlier about the TPS, I got to thinking, I was like, well, it can't be the cable, because if the cable starts stretching or whatever, it's still going to close the throttle and it's still going to sit in the same spot. Only way it could actually change is if the set screw is moving. So I just went ahead and replaced the TPS. I figured that one is probably bad, so I just snagged that guy at O'Reilly's and put a new one in there, so we should be rolling. When I pulled the dump valve off too, I did forget to fill it with transmission fluid, so it's probably a little low, but gave a little sniff to the fluid and it seems to be all right. Then another thing that I did was, I was saying how the thing was right. I fixed the wiring back here. Actually was good anyway, because the power wire for the leash, when I went to take it off, it just pulled right out of the boot. Again, I didn't do any of this stuff. It was all done before. So, but that happens. That wire is probably 10 years old. So got that fixed and wired it right. So now the whole car is dead with the switch off, which the whole car was dead besides the starter wire before. So now it's done right. Everything should work good. And I did do one other thing. I put the 3-inch Motion Raceworks alternator pulley on there, which you can kind of see. Maybe you can't see it. It's way down there, but it's on there. And I did get a belt to fit. This belt is slightly tight. Any of you guys running that thing with a Flowtech header or something, you'll have to have it all the way out. But this is the brand and part number that I used. No, it's probably backwards, but it's K060355. It is 35.6 longer. And the belt I was running before, I can show you that one too, with a standard pulley, was this 060345. And this one is 35 inches long. With the math, I figured it needed to be 1 5/16 inches longer. I got one before and it was a little too long. I did find a part number that's right in between them, and I might order it because this one's a little bit tight for my liking, but we'll give it a shot anyway and see what in the world happens. So that's the extent of what I've been doing now. I'm just going to get that starter solenoid and get a dipstick for it, and then it should be ready to roll. There's nothing else wrong with it. Everything is all good. Hook that fire bottle up. I still could have pulled it. There's a pin in there. If you pull that, it'll deploy the whole system if that fire got bad enough. But yeah, and there was many ways I could put that out. Maybe if you'd have flipped the switch off and that wire was dead, it would have knocked itself out. But it's just scary because there's fuel lines. I mean, pretty damn close. It's kind of hard to see, but this fuel line right here is very close to that fire. And that fire was, I don't know, maybe as big as this red thing here. So it wasn't small by any means, but it wasn't big by any means, but it wasn't small either. It was kind of a in-between fire. So very lucky. It could have been way worse. If the hood was on, could have burned the car down. If I'd have kept driving, could have burned the car down. I mean, so many things could have been way worse. I'm just glad that that's the way that it all ended up. So yeah, not really much you can do there. I mean, just a really, really bizarre situation, but everything's good. So I'm not going to cry about it anymore. But I'll get those parts, get everything ordered up, and we should be running hopefully middle of next week, and we can go test or do whatever we're going to do whenever the time comes. So I appreciate you guys for watching. battling through the nonsense here, but we're still going to try to make a race season out of it. So don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.